TikTok, okay? Before I discuss the acquisition of TikTok by the United States, there was an article by the Tehran Times, okay, that came out years back now, right? I think it might have either been just after October the 7th or before October the 7th, right? And what did the Tehran Times report? They reported an individual called Jonathan Greenblatt, right? So Jonathan Greenblatt is the CEO, right? The Chief Executive Officer of the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League. Now, the ADL are sort of, you know, I don't think they're a think tank, but they're sort of an organization whose main goal is to sort of prevent anti-Semitism and prevent Jewish hate and Jewish crimes. Jewish hate, Jewish crimes, fine. But what they're doing is really they're just looking at anything that's remotely anti-Israel and calling it anti-Semitic. We've all saw this, right? We've all saw this. And this is what the ADL does. Now, Jonathan Greenblatt of the ADL was caught on a hot mic, right? He did not know he was being recorded. And he said that TikTok, right? TikTok, the app, which, like I've said, I'm not a huge fan of myself, right? If anything, I actually kind of despise it. But listening to this and seeing all of these things makes me actually like it a little bit more, because we've got this individual, Anthony Greenblatt, being caught on a hot mic saying that TikTok needs to be banned. Why does it need to be banned? It needs to be banned because our Zionist propaganda doesn't seem to be working with the users of TikTok, the younger generation, right? So they're trying to push this propaganda onto them, and it's just not working. It's not, it's not feasible. It's not viable. It's not any of these things, because these, the younger generation are seeing it, they're consuming it, and it's not working, frankly, okay? And he's saying that for that reason, TikTok needs to be banned, right? So I thought we would start on that, because that's very important, especially looking at new atheism and why, that fell flat on its face, frankly, why that was killed. And obviously Islam is the answer to that also, because Islam became quite popular in the zeitgeist. And that's also something the Zionists fear, right? The Zionists fear more and more people looking into Islam, seeing Islam. And then also, even before we get into TikTok, the Palestinians, right? The Palestinians' perseverance, right, throughout these 2 years of brutal suffering has made more and more people open to Islam, because they, of course, are attributing that perseverance to Islam, which is, of course, true. Now, Anthony Greenblatt said that on a hot mic. The Tehran Times reported it. I believe they said that there wasn't any truth to it, or it wasn't, it was like out of context. I don't know, right? But if we look at it today in 2025, Trump has brokered a deal, right? Or at least he's saying he's brokered a deal. If you actually look at the Chinese side, they're saying not really much. They're staying quite zip, you know what I mean, in terms of TikTok's acquisition. And to be fair, it's probably smart of them to do that, because it's not done until it's done. But what we're seeing is we're looking at a TikTok acquisition by the United States, right? Where the United States will have 7 out of the 8 board members being American, right? 7 out of the 8, which is 87%, if my math serves correct. 87%, 7 out of 8 board members being American, and then one of them being Chinese, right? Being ByteDance, essentially. Which would mean the Chinese have less than 20% in shares of the company. Essentially meaning they don't really have much bargaining power on the app that they created, right? Now, if this was just an acquisition, then that would be fine, right? If this was just an acquisition, that would be fine. But you have to understand the motives of why this is happening, right? If we look at who will be the board members, right? One of them will be Larry Ellison, right? Larry Ellison, who is very old himself now, so he's probably looking at acquiring TikTok, being one of the board members of TikTok, and then handing it down to his son, who I think right now is looking to merge Warner Brothers, the film production company, with Paramount, because I think he owns Skydance, and merging them all into one company. So business runs in this in the Ellison family, they are Jewish, right? They are Jewish. Trump loves these guys, but they are Jewish. And if you look at Michael Dell also, Michael Dell of Dell Technologies, the laptops and the technology company, he is also a member on the board, right? So and he's Jewish. So two, Rupert Murdoch, also, Rupert Murdoch's not Jewish, he's Austrian, but he is very much pro-Israel. You look at his Fox News and it's just constantly propagandizing for the Israeli state, right? So what we're seeing is pretty much all of the board members being either Jewish or pro-Israeli. And TikTok is a company, like I've just said when discussing New Atheism, TikTok is a company that was, from what I could see, I'm not on TikTok myself, but there's been so many brothers and sisters reaching out to me and talking to me about the fact that their deen increasing and strengthening, their faith in Islam strengthening, they're learning fiqh and aqidah and Islamic law and, all of these things through TikTok, okay? Through these short clips, they're learning so much, okay? And then also, on top of that, we're seeing Palestinian voices, pro-Palestinian voices being heard on TikTok, not being banned. And a lot of people, as a result of that, are either looking into Islam or are very much pro-Palestinian in their stances, right? So we're seeing this as a result of TikTok, okay? As a result of a Chinese company that is not in the folds of the United States, or at least not until now. But obviously ByteDance were the was the owner of TikTok, and now it looks like that will no longer be true, or at least they won't have majority shareholder stake in the company. And like, it just goes back to that Jonathan Greenblatt, right? TikTok is a company that has allowed all types of different opinions and thoughts, and it just so happens to be that the pro-Muslim, pro-Palestinian conversations and debates and dialogue has stuck the best. And any Israeli propaganda that's their words, by the way, I'm not calling it Israeli propaganda. He called it Zionist propaganda, right? That's what he called it. Quote, Zionist propaganda is what he called it. So he even calls it himself propaganda. And it's not working, probably because it's not genuine, it's disingenuous, right? When you're calling the content that you're trying to push propaganda, that should tell you why it's not working, right? A lot of this pro-Islam, pro-Palestinian conversations are landing because it's coming from a genuine, sincere place, okay? And I have to give credit to TikTok for that, although I don't use it. And, I've got my own thoughts. And I think it seems like when you use TikTok, right, it's like a trance. You know what I mean? Just scrolling. I don't like that. I don't have control, right? But nevertheless, there's a lot to be learned on it. So you've got to give credit where credit's due. Before we close today, what I must also say is that Larry Ellison, of course, is the mogul and the chairman of Oracle, right? So Oracle is sort of a massive technology company, humongous. It might even be bigger than Apple, right? It's huge. No one's even really heard about it much, but it's a massive company. And they're saying that Oracle will handle the privacy of TikTok, right, as a result of this new deal. I'm sorry to say, that might be true, but Oracle was already handling US data servers, okay, before this acquisition, right? Oracle's been handling it the whole time. Oracle has been handling any type of US data that has been feeded into TikTok, and they're handling it on their servers, right? And that was a deal between the US and ByteDance. And now they're saying, as a result of this new deal, it was already happening. So this is just a terrible excuse. Just say, right, that we're not a fan of and another thing, they're saying they're going to control the algorithms, right? The algorithm is going to be controlled by the United States. Just be honest and say, we don't like the algorithm that China's pushing, right? The content that they're pushing. We want to shadow ban anything that goes against our narrative, because that's what we're seeing here. Why do you think TikTok is being acquired? TikTok is being acquired, right, because they're seeing the conversations that are happening, and they are against it, frankly, right? They are against it. And ByteDance made the argument. They tried to push back and I think sue these bodies, the US, the government, and all of this, and they failed, right? They're trying to say that it's, it doesn't express freedom of speech. The only problem is that China doesn't have freedom of speech. You know what I mean? So it's a difficult argument to be made. But what I will say, right, because we could talk about this forever, is that it seems very disingenuous I can't guarantee that this is the reason why it's being acquired, but I think it's very, the ADL, Jonathan Greenblatt, these people are very friendly with President Trump. Larry Ellison, these people are very friendly with President Trump, right? And you've got Oracle handling the privacy, and they try and say, oh, it's a national security threat, China with data. How long has it lasted, right? How long has TikTok been in the United States, right? What is the US going to do any differently than the Chinese are going to do, right? They both don't have the best interest. So it's like, it's evil versus evil. You know what I mean? And then people will also make the argument, well, if you look in China, any US apps in China, no. That's true. But at the end of the day, you are a country that's supposed to be promoting freedom of speech. And we spoke about this last week with Sam Hamdi. You are a country that's supposed to be promoting freedom of speech. And what it seems that you're doing instead is that you are suppressing freedom of speech and you are only allowing it when it fits your narrative, right? We'll see what happens. We will see what happens. Perhaps the US will acquire it and all the content will stay the same and it will all be sunshine and rainbows. Perhaps that will happen. Who knows?